we say that our brisket should be warm or room temperature. So it should be incredibly moist. You don't need a knife. It just sort of tears off and melts in your mouth.
Today on Dirty Linen, we are going to have a very juicy chat with Melissa Goffin from Red Gum BBQ. Now, when I say juicy, there are many things that I mean. The first among them is brisket, because we are talking American barbecue today, and brisket is the pinnacle of meats when it comes to US barbecue. But we are also talking about women in business, and we are talking about B Corp businesses, about businesses that are run sustainably. I also want to chat about milestones, because Red Gum is celebrating its 10th birthday, which is an amazing achievement. So with all of that, Melissa, welcome to Dirty Linen.
Hi, Dani. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to chat juicy things.
Well, which juicy thing shall we start with? I reckon let's start with the 10-year milestone, and you can give us a little bit of the backstory of Red Gum BBQ, how it all came about and how you've managed to achieve this incredible birthday.
Sure. Well, we're so excited. It's definitely a bit surreal that we've hit the 10-year mark. My husband and I were sort of sitting in our living room. We just had our first child, and I was a school teacher. He worked for local government, and he said, "I'd love to start a barbecue restaurant." And I went, "Sure, that sounds like a reasonable idea." He had fallen in love with low and slow barbecue by visiting me in the US, and my family is from the South, where barbecue is life. So it made sense, and we loved food, and we talked about what we loved about food all the time. So it wasn't that much of a surprise, but some of those early conversations were, gosh, if we go from these careers where we feel quite like we're giving back to the community in some way, how do we do this in a way that we don't feel is just lining our pockets and, contributing to the degradation of the world's resources and animal cruelty and all of those things. So some of those early chats were about creating a business that we thought our kids would be really proud of, and that we were going to be happy to talk about in 10 years time or 20 years time about, how it was contributing to the community and the world of food. And it started with a little pop-up in a local field here, the Briars down on the Mornington Peninsula. We invited all our friends. We got an offset. We had $10,000 in savings. We bought an offset smoker, $5,000 worth of branding, and just sort of started smoking and selling it. And, from there it just grew, and eventually in 2017 we opened up the Red Hill venue, which became bigger than anything we would have imagined, and here we are. So it's a really fun story from two people that were not very well resourced, we're not very business minded, certainly not lots of industry insider experience. And it's just been a total joy and passion and thrill that we're here and loving it and successful all these years later.
How do some of those ethical considerations drive decisions in the business? What have you done or not done because it just didn't feel like the right thing to you?
Gosh, the list of those things is really endless. Early on, it was not B Corp. It was just those kind of like, how do we come to decision making from like a values and moral framework? So I remember sort of going to my husband, Martin, and always asking him, like, I've got this sort of opportunity to do this thing or to buy this thing or to work with this person, or, and what do you think about it? And it sort of, we really checked in with each other quite a bit to say, does it feel right? Is there something that we're concerned about here? And where we felt there was a contradiction, we made the choice. So sometimes the really difficult choice to not go in that direction. So our choice around ethical sourcing of meat is one of those, especially in the early days. But even now, I talk about the fact that 3% of Australia's pork industry is made up of free range pigs. And it's an incredibly small amount. And that's just because demand doesn't exist there for it. Obviously, demand drives supply. So, and pricing obviously is, you know, within that story. But really early on, we were trying to get free range products, and it was incredibly hard. It still continues to be difficult and very expensive. And then to create a product from that people at a price point that people will purchase. So there were lots of times when suppliers would say to us, and even, recently, a supplier might say, look, it's bred free range, not free range, or it's finished on grain, not fully grass fed. But that's okay. You can still say whatever you want to say about it. We'll even give you the posters to put on your wall, all of those things. And we've just gone, no, we get it. It's more expensive. It's more difficult. But these are the values that we stand by, that we think are important, that we have to continually reinforce, because otherwise they're not in, they don't matter. So that's one. The list goes on and on around how we pay our staff, how we employ, who we employ, what those recruitment practices look like, how we offer entitlements. Again, those decisions are really difficult because, as you're very well aware, pricing and margins within hospitality are so thin. So anytime you're kind of making that ethical decision, which is most often the more expensive decision, it really impacts everything. So it's always a hard choice to make, but we just keep pressing in that direction, and just ends up being the right one in all the ways.
I mean, it's one thing to have those conversations with each other or with your suppliers, but it's another thing to communicate it to your customers. I mean, how do you do that? How do you charge what you need to charge to run the business the way that you want to? Is it about conversations? Is it just about building trust? Like, how do your customers take to all of this?
Yeah, it's all of those things, and it's really difficult because ultimately we have customers that want a cheap meal, and that is a certain segment of our population that don't want to hear about why it's more expensive. They just want what they think is, something inexpensive. You've then got people across the spectrum, maybe those that are, really kind of focused on this kind of information and really excited about it. And then you've got the people in the middle. And I think we pitch to that sort of middle and high end where we say, look, we're expensive. We don't make excuses for that, but we want to talk to you about why we think it's value for money, why we think we're providing value for money, number one, but also why we've made the decisions that we've made. B Corp is a really great way for us to do that. And that came around in 2017, having a conversation with somebody about these ethical choices, and them saying, have you heard about B Corp? That might be a really cool thing for you guys to do. So we looked into that. We actually got our B Corp certification in 2018 in January. And when we got that, we thought we were sort of racing at the end to get it across the line. And at the time, there wasn't another restaurant in Australia that had it. We're here. We just recertified again last year in 2022, and we still are the only B Corp restaurant in Australia. And I think that really speaks to how challenging it is to not only get B Corp certification, but to make these choices within hospitality because of the price impacts, because of the complexities of our business as they are, to then add this added complexity to it, maybe time to kind of get this sort of stuff done, energy and focus. But we talk to our customers about B Corp. We put it on our menus. We realize that education is really critical to our business model from that low and slow perspective, as well as from the cost perspective. And yeah, all of our staff are really well versed in talking to people about pricing. We have FAQs on our table, one of those being, why is my meat so expensive? Yeah, so we really do focus a lot on how to tell that story and share with consumers why it's important, not only when they're visiting us to make these choices, but outside of that. I always say to people, if you're getting a cheap meal, something's wrong. Like, it's not inexpensive to make food. It's, some resources being degraded, some human being. Yeah, it's just, our world is expensive.
Yes. Which long-time listeners to the podcast will have heard our chat with Little Sky Gelato, which is a B Corp certified ice cream store in Melbourne. And yeah, for those who don't know, B Corp measures a company's social and environmental impact over a whole range of markers, and it is very rigorous. And it is a great, I guess, it helps you audit your business in quite a comprehensive way, but it is a great branding tool as awareness grows about what B Corp can mean. But yeah, look, I feel like we're having so many conversations. I mean, there's never not a conversation to have about value and about, what the true cost of food is. But it feels like it's particularly acute at the moment where, big diners understandably are watching what they spend, but people want to do business in a certain way. Is it tough, Melissa? Like, how hard is it for you to manage all of this?
Really hard. And it's a tension that we understand from the perspective of our guests, but it's a tension that we experience. We're really blessed to own our own home, but we've got mortgage rates and interest rates that are going through the roof. So, we're also going to the grocery store and, seeing the cost of everything rise. So we get it. It's a really difficult conversation. We just continue to have it. We don't, we talk a lot about that idea of value and wanting to make sure internally that we feel like our pricing is fair, and that we're providing value. So being able to, I guess, have that confidence from ourselves and across our teams that we believe in what we're creating, we believe in the quality of product, and we believe that it's been priced appropriately with consideration for all of its costs, but for what people are getting on the plate and experiencing as well. I think we've been really lucky slash, right in how we've kind of done that over the years, because what we've done has just continued. It hasn't really affected our visitation or our customer experience or our consumers sort of offering, like, how much people are visiting and purchasing. And I think what I say to people about that, and what I talk to people within the industry about that, is like, to kind of make decisions that you think are right for your business, that you think are in line with what you want to create and what you want people to experience, and to just trust that. I think it goes holistically across not just sort of a product, but the brand identity, the story that you tell about your business, your products, your menu as a whole, your customer experience, the offering, all of those things should be really clear to you, and you should feel, really connected to all of them. And then if it's going out to people, I just think people resonate with something that is clear and, confident, I suppose. So yeah, it's just having the bravery and the confidence to sort of go out and say, this is our product, this is what it costs us to make, we believe in it, and here it is. And I think customers respond to that.
Wow, I love all that. So, Melissa, let's talk about what's on the plate. But I want you to start by taking me back to your childhood in the South. Tell me how barbecue was life.
Yeah. Okay. So if I actually say to barbecue aficionados where I'm from, they will be, mortified that I've described it as the South. So I'm from Miami, Florida, which is very south in the United States, but not considered a part of the South. So, um, But my family is from the South. So my mom was born in Virginia. Her grandparents grew up in South Carolina and Virginia, and for them and for my mom, that was a really sacred meal. So my mom has a very strong opinion about, what coleslaw should look like and taste like. And when she came to visit, we were really sort of holding our breath as she ate from our menu. Pulled pork is quite literally her favorite meal. And I grew up going to a place in Miami called Shorty's Barbecue, and it's been there since I think the 60s, potentially even the 50s. It's a big open air, like big long wooden benches, big pits. Everything was served on kind of these old like plastic trays with the checkerboard paper lining, and it was all served by like chunks of pulled pork and brisket and things on these trays. So I have some of my earliest memories are going to Shorty's with my grandparents who also lived in Miami and having barbecue. And visiting them later in Tennessee. And, when we'd order dinner, it was from the local barbecue restaurant, and we'd just have barbecue as a family. So I think that's really one of the things that Martin fell in love with. So he's English, and when visiting me in the US and we were in Georgia and we were eating barbecue for the first time, and he was like going, "Oh my gosh, this is incredible." And I'm just going to pour the sauce all over my meat from the squeezy bottle. And, it's there's this very sort of like animalistic, like guttural kind of joy that comes from eating barbecue. I think particularly for men sometimes. But one of the things that he really loved about it and fell in love with it is that sort of cultural connection, this experience that barbecue provides, which is kind of sitting down with friends and family over this sort of meal that is steeped in tradition and history. And it's like any sort of, I guess, like national food that has that experience, that connection to family and friends and joyful experiences. And yeah, it's that we really love and that we recreate or try and recreate for people. It's not just the food that is, we want to be the sort of best quality and really traditional and connected to that roots of the food, but also the experience, the family, the connection, the shared trays, the reaching over everybody to get the last scoop of mac and cheese, and that kind of eating with your hands. We have a sign on the wall. It's like, you can't eat pork ribs with your fork. Get stuck in. You should have it on your face. Like, that's when you're doing it the right way.
Oh, I love that. And tell me about your brisket and the love that goes into it.
There's a lot of love that goes into the brisket. So our brisket is grass fed. We source it from suppliers that we, as much as possible, are able to know the long history of, every bit of where that's come from across our supply chain. And it is, we get it in these sort of big pieces of meat. It's trimmed. It's got a rub on it, which is our beef rub, and it's smoked for usually around 12 hours. Our smokers in Red Hill are about 4-meter long pits, Texas offset smokers that we have repurposed. They're LPG tanks that we have. They've got really cool like old date stamps on them that are etched from like the 70s, but they've been repurposed into smokers. So we smoke with only wood, and that is red gum that we get from around the corner. The garden supply store quite literally drive their tractor over to our venue and dump the wood. And then it's so it's very traditional. We're not using coals. We're not using sort of gas assisted sort of pits, but it's the fire. It's watching the temperature. It's smoked over very low temperatures. So it's just the smoke that's running through the barrel that's really gently heating the meat. And then, they're probing it quite a few hours later, just checking on it, pulling it out, and then slicing it after it's been rested. So it rests for quite a few hours and then is sliced to order. One of the things that people, some who aren't familiar with barbecue, are quite surprised by is that the meat doesn't come out hot. It comes out warm. We say that our brisket should be warm or room temperature. And that's just quite literally from the time it takes to slice the meat, which is being kept warm, onto the trays and then brought to somebody. So it should be incredibly moist. You don't need a knife. It just sort of tears off and melts in your mouth.
Oh, I don't know if I've ever had to stop one of these podcasts because of how much I'm drooling, but this could be the day. Just so transporting. I'm so like in there with my face in that plate of food, Melissa. Just so good. Yeah, absolutely love it. Has it been much of a hard sell to Australian diners? I mean, we've had a bit of, obviously there's a lot more American barbecue around than there was 20 years ago, but I think people are still getting used to the idea that barbecue doesn't always mean sausages on the grill. Is there a bit of outreach to explain yourselves?
A little bit, a lot less than there was. So when we first started showing up to markets back in 2013, it was a sort of like the Renaissance, or the, actually not even the Renaissance here in Australia, but sort of the birth of pulled pork. So around the time that we got into markets, you were starting to see pulled pork really take off. And all of a sudden it was sort of pulled pork on menus everywhere. So when people visited us and we were selling pulled pork rolls and brisket rolls, they were going for pulled pork every time. And then all of a sudden, sort of, brisket became a little bit more popular, and people were ordering the brisket from us. We still have a lot of people that visit us. And so, going back to those kind of early days, we again realized that, that idea of education, it was so important for us to talk to people about what they could or should expect when they're visiting us. So that idea that the meat isn't coming out hot, and like why they couldn't just order a steak, or why does it sell out, like why can't, you don't have brisket on the menu, well, I want a brisket, just go get me some. So there's certain ideas that we had to really share with people and talk about. Or why am I sitting next to people I don't know? Why is it served by weight? Why is it so expensive? Like all of those things we found, well, if we're talking to people about what they can expect, then they'll have a nicer experience. They'll know that it's not just a mistake, that they didn't just get room temperature meat because we left it sitting there, or it's not right, And so I think we certainly I think most people now know what to expect when they're visiting us, but we do get a lot of people that don't. So our wait staff are really well versed in, have you been here before, is the first thing that they're saying to people. If anyone on the table hasn't, they go into a story of what low and slow barbecue is, how it's, what their menu looks like, how they might order, how much is going to satisfy the group, because it does come out, you don't order individually. If they're ordering, 1,000 grams of pulled pork, then that's going to be just come out in kind of trays that are going to feed the whole group. So there's a lot of that information that gets shared with people, and a little bit about the ethics, and then why they can, I think subtly, why they can expect the prices that they're expecting. So yeah, that education piece is so important, but it's less and less that we're doing it now. There's a bit more awareness of what American style barbecue is. We very rarely get people looking for snags, but yeah.
So, Melissa, I know that you're also really passionate about women in business and about, promoting the role of women in hospitality. Can you tell me about that side of what you're all about?
Yeah. Look, I think I came into business from, another life. It certainly wasn't something that I didn't do an MBA, and I didn't come from families of sort of entrepreneurs or business leaders, and just learned a lot, found it incredibly challenging, but also just fell in love with the experience. I think women do business sometimes differently to men, or um, what I think I'd prefer to say about that is that I think that traditionally there's been a really male dominated business landscape in terms of the leaders of our businesses, the CEOs, managing directors. And then I think certain sort of ways of doing business have been prioritized. If we think about women in leadership roles, they tend to sort of really do some of those soft skills very well. They tend to sort of lead with empathy, maybe more so than men. And I understand this conversation is very stereotypical. But if you picture those sort of stories that we hear about kind of men in boardrooms and the expectations of behavior in those spaces, or, showing emotion in those spaces, I get really excited about women in leadership and how they are in many ways leading a change in what we expect from workplaces and from business leadership. And certainly when we look at the hospitality industry and you look at traditionally the people that have owned and run hospitality venues, I don't know the percentages on this, but it would be incredibly overwhelmingly men. I think that men do a wonderful job at creating menus and creating thriving businesses. But I think that women in that space, in hospitality in particular, have been really missing from the conversation for a long time. I'm excited to be one of those voices in that industry and kind of talking about business leadership from my perspective and some of the things that are really important to me, and some of those things around values and ethics and how we employ and why we employ certain groups, how we're paying people, how we're really integrating empathy and ethics into business. And I think that women do that really, really well.
What would you say to a woman listening to this who perhaps works in a hospitality business and feels that their voice isn't being heard, or that they're not able to fulfill their potential in whatever role they're in?
Gosh, I think that we need to continue to assert our wants and needs and be unapologetic in that. So I suppose what I would say to that woman is to continue to request and seek what it is that she wants and needs from her workplace, and if that workplace isn't able to respond to that, that she finds one that does, or go out and create one. So I think one of the things that I loved about starting our business was that I could create a business and a workplace that was one that I would love to go to. And it was really important to me that we fill the building with wonderful human beings. It was way less important to me that we have the most highly skilled people that we could attract. We don't have any room in our business for people that are great at what they do, but are not kind individuals. That's really critical to me and to all of our employment decisions and to all of our ongoing expectations of people within the business. So I think we need to continue to expect that from our workplaces and continue to assert that. I think, like I said, I think women do that really well. And I think that they're not often within hospitable, which is, forgive the pun, within hospitable environments for that. But we just need to continue to kind of say that, it's really important. Not only is it all of the things around really makes good business sense, financially important, or, valuable to a business. Like, these aren't just wishes or things that we would like, but they're really critical to business's success. We can't run any type of business anymore without care and consideration for all of the people in it and all of the ways that we're handling ourselves and our business choices. It's just not, we're not going to attract and retain staff. We're not going to, continue to be successful. We just need to, it's a lot to put on business owners' plates that now you need to be doing all of these other things, but we just do.
Yeah, so well said, Melissa. I love all that. And as you say, it's not just the right thing to do; it makes business sense. So anybody that's not elevating women in their business, and even women that aren't bringing women up with them, it makes no sense.
Yeah, along those lines as well. We have businesses. We have women across our business that have carers needs, have kids, small kids in school, need to run off and be present for the family, either because they need to or they want to. And we create that flexibility. We allow that flexibility. We nurture that flexibility. The women in our business are incredibly dedicated, passionate, incredible human beings. So, they have to leave to go pick up kids for something, or they have their son that's in a swim competition that they want to attend. So they need to drop off somebody at kinder, or somebody's having a bad morning and they're late. All of those things are things that we get. We're parents ourselves, we see the dedication that those individuals are putting into their work outside of all of those times when they're away, and they love that experience of being able to have that flexibility. So it's just, for us, it's a win-win. We get this great workforce of incredibly committed women that, whether it's family issues or or they don't have family, but they're some of our most valued employees.
Love that. And I suppose I would only want to add that fathers should also be picking up the kids and struggling to get them to daycare or whatever it is.
Thanks so much for mentioning that. So in our business, and like, that was a real omission for me, but I wanted to kind of just talk about women in particular, that of course the lion's share are falling to the care responsibility in our society, which certainly is not the way that it should be, but it is the way that it is sometimes. In our family, I'm the managing director of the business, and my husband is the one that picks up the kids every day. So he leaves work at 3:00 to go grab them, and he's because he's an amazing chef, he's making dinner for us all every night as well. So we certainly have that flipped a bit in our family, and love to see it in all its forms.
Awesome. Melissa, finally, I would just love to talk about the second outlet that you've opened up in Seaford, mostly a takeaway place. And I would just sort of like to frame this around the idea of growing a business and, whether the business needed to grow, you wanted to grow, you just saw a need for some nice pulled pork rolls in Seaford. How do you sort of conceive of all of that?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think that idea, or that question around sort of growth for growth's sake, is a really good one. But what we found during COVID in particular was, I'll take another step backward. We have had products in our business like rubs and sauces and things for quite a few years, even before COVID hit. So that was just sort of responding to demands from consumers going, "You've got your barbecue sauces, can I buy them?" So we've had that going on for quite a while. We were always sort of looking to grow that side of the business. But when COVID hit, it became really, it just became really obvious to us that that was the next step that we wanted and perhaps needed to make for what we saw as the future viability of the business holistically. We got very nervous, obviously, that as many did, about the future of our industry. about having this sort of single venue, as successful as it was, did we feel confident that in 10 and 20 years' time, something might not sort of come around that would affect that? And we wanted to diversify. And I guess what we always saw as the next step for us being a second venue during COVID, we realized that it was that diversification piece that would kind of best secure the business holistically. So we decided to sort of pour all of our growth ideas and resources to that. So Seaford is, after we sort of went in a couple different directions, that's where we landed, and really is primarily so that we can grow the manufacturing side of the business. So that is Red Gum BBQ at home, and it is the offering where we try and bring Red Gum BBQ into people's homes. So starting with sauces and rubs, so things and products that we already have existing, to some of those products that we created during COVID, which were some of the kind of small goods, sliced brisket packaged, our house-made sausages packaged, smoked chicken breast, pulled pork, mac and cheese, meal boxes. We have subscription boxes that we've been doing for the past 16 months, maybe. We just finished our 12 months. So we do a year of, so you can get 3, 6, 12-month subscriptions, and every month a new box arrives to you that includes some meat and sides and things that are unique to a specific region in the South. So we go to states across what is called the Southern Barbecue Belt. So you might get a box one month that arrives that's from Georgia, and it has like Georgia hash in it, or, pulled pork made in Georgia style. And you get the recipe notes, you get tasting notes, you get stories about the region, barbecue in the region, a little bit of its history, all of that. It's all beautifully, sustainably packaged. And so that's something that we've been doing. And I guess what we wanted to do was kind of like formalize, I suppose, that at-home offering and grow. So we're at capacity at Red Hill, amazingly, beautifully. And we needed a space where we could have more room to kind of package and bottle and create and grow this at-home offering. And then we thought, well, we need a takeaway option. Like, selling food to customers is what we do. It's what we know. It's what we love, and what we know customers love. So this is a little bit of like a test kitchen kind of place where we've got a takeaway lunch option, but with a rotating menu of, like burgers over coals, which is something that we don't do in Red Hill. Lots of sandwiches, burgers. We want to sort of be curing meat. So Reubens with cured brisket and all of those kind of house-made things that we'll do in bulk in Seaford.
It sounds so good. And do you ship those boxes, those subscription boxes, everywhere?
Yeah. Oh, well, just across Victoria. But across Victoria is everywhere for now. Yeah, we've got a logistics company that can get it most places.
Sounds so good. Melissa, absolutely amazing to chat to you. I feel like we've covered a lot. It was definitely juicy and pretty comprehensive. It's so great to get an insight into your business, which, sounds like it was founded on values that you've been able to carry through for a decade, which really is extraordinary. I hope you've been doing a lot of patting yourselves on the back about all this, as well as, stoking the fires and serving up the brisket.
Yes, we have been. It's been really exciting. Very surreal to think that 10 years has passed. But it's been amazing, to be nominated as a Critics' Choice winner for the Good Food Awards that just passed, and to, have all of this amazing response to our open in Seaford, and coinciding with the 10-year anniversary. It's just been a time of, really intense work and overwhelm, but like immense gratitude. It's just been really quite special. So, and to top it off, to talk to you and your listeners on this podcast, it's amazing. Thank you.
Oh, well, congratulations, and thank you for sharing with us today. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Dani.
This is Dirty Linen, and I'm Dani Valent. We air the issues that the hospitality industry finds hard to talk about, hearing from different people with unique perspectives. We want to hear from you as well. If you have something that needs to be said about a topic, get in touch so we can include your perspective. Contact us at dirtylinen@deepintheweeds.com.au or hit us up on Insta at Dirty Linen Podcast. We can't wait to hear from you.
This